The best way to describe the cluster C personality styles would be the anxious personality styles. So these ones are really dominated by worry, concern, or anxiety about either relationships or individual performance, especially individual performance at work. So these are quite different than the other clusters of styles because cluster A is really about creating distance between other people, but not necessarily about anxiety in the same way. So while cluster A is just putting distance because that's what they want to do, it's not dominated by worry about the relationships and the interaction and the distance they're putting between themselves and other people, whereas cluster C has a lot of anxiety around that and probably worries about what can go wrong in relationships, not because they don't want to have the relationships, but because they are fundamentally important to them. So the quality of those relationships, the quality of that interpersonal interaction is really, really important. So that's where the worry comes from, is because people get concerned about doing something wrong, saying the wrong thing, doing the wrong thing at the wrong time, having a negative impact on a team. They really want to do the right thing, really want to be liked by everyone in the group often, and that's where that kind of anxiety and that difficulty can come from. But it's unlike the cluster C personality styles where it's more about distance but less about anxiety. And then it's different, very different from the cluster B styles, because the cluster B styles tend to be much lower anxiety. So there's sometimes aggressive or confrontational or histrionic kind of dramatic interpretations of things and kind of those kind of presentations, but with really low anxiety, and people worry a lot less about their impact on other people in the cluster B styles. In the cluster C styles, they're very worried and very concerned. So that stress and anxiety and worry can be a driving factor in the relationships and work and driving productivity or performance at work. So, one of the styles is the perfectionistic style. That's worry not necessarily about the relationships, but of the quality of the work. And so people who are perfectionistic, that can be a positive trait when it's conscientiousness, right? It's a facet, but sometimes the extreme facet of conscientiousness. So wanting to do a good job, having a strategic long-term focus, having a really clear idea about what you want to get done. Now, when it's at a moderate, healthy, adaptive amount, that's really, really useful. It's highly valued in the workplace, but it can go too far. And when it goes to the extremes, that kind of obsession with order or rules or productivity can be counterproductive when it's channeled in the wrong way, right? Sometimes it gets channeled into irritation and annoyance, like, why can't I do the right thing? Why can't I do this well enough? Or why can't other people do this to my standards? And when it gets to be obsessive and kind of anxiety focused about performance, that's when it's counterproductive, when it's more open-minded and strategic thinking about what's good productivity and what can we do, but also with that kind of openness and understanding of everyone's limitations and everyone makes mistakes, then that's okay. But when it gets to the extreme of kind of intolerance, really hard, rigid, strict deadlines, quality controls, and to the point where stuff doesn't get done, that's when it's counterproductive. Now, if we look at the styles that are more relationship oriented, again, sometimes people worry so much about doing or saying the wrong thing, doing the wrong thing in a group, having a negative impact on the group, that it's actually counterproductive in itself. So I'm sure we've all been in teams or relationships or seen situations where someone is so worried about doing the wrong thing or so worried about, making a mistake in a group that they actually drive people away from them, that they're so obsessed or so anxious or so worried about doing the wrong thing or saying something bad or, hurting someone's feelings, that they actually end up driving people away because people don't want to deal with that level of, sometimes it's seen as neediness, right? But it just comes from an anxiety or a worry about wanting to do the right thing, but a concern about not doing the right thing. And sometimes you see conflict emerge from that because if people don't understand where they're coming from, or people don't understand why these behaviors are happening or what the person's kind of automatic reaction to stress or to conflict is, then people can drive each other apart because they don't understand that one person is trying to do the right thing, even though from the other person's perspective, maybe it seems kind of annoying or needy or desperate. So having those conversations and understanding who really, really cares about making sure they do everything right, either in kind of a perfectionistic work-oriented sort of way or a relationship team building sort of way, is really important to understanding team dynamics and knowing that under really difficult or threatening situations, that anxiety can get crippling and people make all the wrong mistakes and they do all the wrong things, and then they kind of spiral into this negative thought cycle about worrying about what they're doing, knowing they're doing not quite the right thing, they're doing the wrong thing, but also unable to interrupt that cycle. So sometimes those people really need help or support in managing relationships or understanding roles in the team, need a bit of emotional support or need a bit of support with work, because sometimes perfectionists take too much on, get a bit too kind of zealous about taking too many things on and then do everything badly. So, understanding where that stress comes from and how to combat it is really important, both in self-awareness and in managing teams.